Very good morning, dear children. Dear children, we are going to start our history chapter 8, that is devotional paths to the divine. So, children, see, we have seen many times people, those are performing certain rituals of worshipping God, or they are singing the bhajans, kirtans, kavalis, and sometimes we have even seen people, doing meditation, means they are repeating the name of God in silence. Fine. And sometimes we have seen that some people, they are so moved, by the feeling of this God, that they are moved to tears. They started crying doing worship. Such intense devotion and love to God is the legacy of various kinds of bhakti and Sufi movements. So there are so many types of bhakti and Sufi movements, children, that have evolved. Now, from where it started? It started since 8th century. From the 8th century, it has been started. Fine. The idea of supreme God. First of all, we will go through this topic. Before, children, the large kingdoms, they emerged. Different groups of people, they started worshipping their own gods and goddesses. Means different people, they started worshipping their own gods. Fine. As people were brought together through the growth of town, trades, empires, new ideas began to develop for this idea of supreme God. When there began to make different types of town, trades, empire, this idea, it developed more. The idea that all living beings pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth, performing good deeds and bad, came to be widely accepted. Now we also say the same thing, that before coming to this, uh, before taking birth in a human life, we come across countless of births and deaths. Fine. And with rebirth, and whatever deeds we do, good or bad, those are going to affect our coming life. Fine. So this thing we also say. Then after that, children, similarly, the idea that all human beings are not equal even at birth gained ground during this period. But as you have seen, there was caste, caste system also. There was differentiation also. So that time what happened, this idea was also prevalent, that all the human beings, they are not equal. Their equality is based on uh, in which family they took birth. Means there is no equality. Fine. The belief that social privileges came from birth in a noble family or high caste were the subject of many learned texts. So they used to say that if you are going to enjoy some social privileges, that comes from your birth only. If you took birth in a noble family, if you took birth in a high caste family, then only you are going to enjoy the privileges. Fine. And these were there in some learned texts also, these things. Many people were uneasy with such ideas and turned to the teachings of Buddha and Jainas, according to which it was possible to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. So why? Because people were not happy with these ideas. Which ideas? The inequality. So what did they do? You have read about Buddha and Jaina, Buddhism and Jainism in the previous class. So according to Buddhism and Jainism, now these people, they turn towards the Buddhism and Jainism. Why? Because Buddhism, Jainism, these religions say that it is, yes, it is possible to overcome such social differences. We can remove these social differences, and we can also break the cycle of rebirth. We can break the cycle of rebirth with personal effort. We have read about Buddhism and Jainism in class 6. So So people, they started liking those religions. They followed Buddhism and Jainism. Others felt attracted to the idea of supreme God who could deliver humans from such bondage if approached with devotion or bhakti. And the left ones, those who were left, those who have not followed the Buddhism and Jainism, they were attracted towards the idea of supreme God. And what was it? That what does the idea of supreme God says? That humans, that the idea of supreme God, this idea can remove the human from the bondage. Fine, if they are going to approach with devotion, if they are going to approach with bhakti, this idea, this bondage can be broken. This idea, advocated in the Bhagavad Gita, grew in popularity in the early centuries of the Common Era. This idea was advocated by Bhagavad Gita, and it became very popular in the early centuries of the Common Era. Now, different deities, they became popular, like Shiva, Vishnu, Durga. They became as supreme deities, and they were worshipped now, and elaborated rituals were done to worship them. At the same time, children, gods and goddesses worshipped in different areas. What now they were identified as? All the goddess and goddesses, they were identified as Shiva, Vishnu and Durga. Whatever gods and goddesses, whatever they were worshipping, they were identifying them as Shiva, Vishnu and Durga. In the process, local myths and legends became a part of the Puranic stories. The method of worship recommended in the Puranas were introduced in the local cults. Now, in this process of worship, local myths, local legends, they became the Puranic stories. Fine, the Purana story, and in that Puranas, how to worship, that method was also introduced in the local culture. Whatever local culture was there, so that introduced with the worshipping of God, and it added with stories, like whatever local myths were there, whatever legends were there, they were added in the Puranas. Eventually, the Puranas also laid down that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. Now, Puranas said, whatever written in Puranas, it said that it is very, very possible for a person to receive the grace of God, and the God is not going to check your caste status. Fine. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainas adopted these beliefs. So previously the people were adopting Buddhism and Jainism, and now even the idea of bhakti, this idea of bhakti became so popular that even the Buddhist and the Jainist, they were now accepting these beliefs. Fine. Then a new kind of bhakti in South India. Now we will talk about South India. Fine. You can see in figure 1, it is a page from South Indian manuscript of Bhagavad Gita. Fine. Now, what is a new kind of bhakti that evolved in South India? They were the Nayanars and the Alvars. The 7th to 9th century saw the emergence of new religious movements. There were new religious movements led by Nayanars. Fine, they were the Nayanars, please underline, it's important. Nayanars were the saint devoted to Shiva. They were the saints which were devoted to Lord Shiva. And the Alvars, whom they were worshipping, they were the saints which were devoted to Vishnu. So the Nayanars, they were devoted to Shiva, and the Alvars, they were devoted to Vishnu, who came from all castes, including those considered untouchable, like the Palayyar and the Panars. Now these Palayyars and Panars, they were considered an untouchables. But now, in these religious movements, all castes were included. Even those were included, those were considered as untouchable. And who were considered as untouchable? Palayars and Panars. They were sharply critical of the Buddhist and Jainist and preached ardent love of Shiva and Vishnu as the path of salvation. Now they were criticizing Buddhism and Jainism, and what they were preaching, they were saying that if your love to Shiva and Vishnu, your total devotion to Shiva and Vishnu is going to take you to the path of salvation, means you are going to free from this cycle of birth and rebirth. Fine. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in the Sangam literature, and they talked about love and heroism, and that is found in the Sangam literature. Now, what is Sangam literature? It is the earliest example of Tamil literature. Fine. And it was composed during the early centuries of the Common Era, and they blended them with the values of bhakti. All these ideas, they were blended with the values of bhakti. The Nayanars, the Alvars, they used to go from place to place, and what were they doing? They were composing poems in the praise of their deities. Fine. From Vishnu and for Shiva. Enshrined in the villages they visited and set them to music. And these poems they used to sing by giving them certain musics, and they used to roam to different villages for this. Fine. Next, children, Nayanars and Alvars. Now just go through it. There were 63 Nayanars. They belong to different backgrounds. They included potters, untouchables, workers, peasants, hunters, soldiers, Brahmins, chiefs. And the best known among these were the Upper, Sambandar, Sundarar, and Mani Kavasagar. Fine. These two sets of compilation of their songs, their songs were known as Tivaram and Tiruvakam. Fine. So the songs of Nayanars, they were known as Tiruvaram and Tivaram and Tiruvakam. Fine. After that, 12 Alvars were there, and they were all coming from equally divergent background, different backgrounds, and they were best known among them. The best known was the Periyalvars and their daughter Andal. Fine. And the different names are there. Their songs were known as Divya Prabandham. So the Alvar songs were known as Divya Prabandham. Now see in the side, hagiography, it means the writings of saints' life. Fine. Now children, between the 10th and the 12th century, the Chola and the Pandyan kings, you have seen, they started making big temples around many of the shrines visited by the saint poets, strengthening the links between bhakti tradition and the temple worship. So they started with both these. This is also the time when their poems were compiled. Beside hagiographies or religion biographies of the Alvars and Nayanars were also composed. Fine. So in spite of hagiographies, the biographies were also written of Alvars and Nayanars. Today we use these texts as a source for writing histories of the Bhakti tradition. So these texts are now useful when we are writing the histories of the Bhakti tradition. Fine. Now come to the next page, children. Philosophy and Bhakti. We are going to go through now philosophy and Bhakti. Fine. Now see, Shankara. Now who was Shankara? He was one of the most influential philosopher of India. He was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He was an advocate of Advaita, or the doctrine of oneness of the individual soul and the supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. Now, what does he advocated? He advocated Advaita. And what is the meaning of Advaita? It was a doctrine of oneness of individual soul. All the souls are one, and the supreme God is the ultimate reality. The truth is the supreme God. He taught that Brahmins, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any Brahman, sorry. He said that the Brahman is the ultimate reality, and it is formless, no form, and it is without any attributes. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or Maya. He says that whatever world is around us, it is just a Maya, and preach renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. And he used to say that he used to preach the renunciation of the world to bring the whole world together. And he adopted the path of knowledge, fine, and he preached to understand the true nature of Brahman. What is the true nature of Brahman, and how we are going to attain the salvation. Fine. Now the second one is Ramanuja. He was born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, and he was deeply influenced by the Alvars. Now what does he say? He said best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Alvars, they were devotees of Vishnu. So he says that if we want to attain salvation, then we have to devote ourselves to Vishnu. Vishnu and his grace helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. Now he says that it is Vishnu who is going to, help us in attaining the bliss of union with him. We are going to be one with Vishnu. He propounded the doctrine of Vishishta Dvita. Now the previous doctrine was Advaita, and now is the doctrine of Vishwavidyata. What is it? He said that qualified oneness in that soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. He said that oneness in that soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Fine, he said that oneness in God is there, and when we are going to, united with the Supreme God, still there will be distinctions, still there will be difference. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of bhakti which developed in the North India subsequently. So this Ramanuja's doctrine, it inspired the bhakti which was there in North India as well. Then is Basavana's Virashaivism. Fine. So we noted earlier the connection between Tamil Bhakti movement and temple worship. We have seen this in turn led to a reaction. Now what was the reaction? That it is best represented in the Virashaiva movement. And who initiated this movement? It was Basavana and his companions. Who were the companions of Basavana? Alama Prabhu and Akka Mahadevi. Now what did they do in this movement? This movement began in Karnataka in the mid-12th century. Fine. Virashaivas, they argued. What did they argue? They argued strongly. They talked about the equality of all human beings against Brahmanical ideas about caste and the treatment of women. They talked about we want equality for all human beings. As the Brahmanical ideas, they talked about caste and the treatment of women. So they wanted equality. Fine. They were also against all forms of ritual and idol worship. So they were just against the rituals. Whatever rituals were done, idol worship is done. So they were against this. So then comes, children, the saints of Maharashtra. Fine. Now see in the box given at a side, the Vaishnavas, poet saints of Maharashtra were Janeshwar, Namdev, Eknath, Tukaram. They were the devotees of Vitthal. Fine. Now, devotion around Lord Vitthal gave rise to Varkari sect. Fine. Which lay emphasis on the annual pilgrimage to Pandharpur. They says that you have to go annually every year to Pandharpur. The cult of Vitthal emerged as a powerful mode of devotion and was very popular amongst the people. So this cult became very popular amongst the people. Now let's talk about the saint of Maharashtra. From the 13th to the 17th century, children, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets. Fine, whose songs in simple Marathi continued to inspire people. So they used to sing songs. The important one, please underline, were Janeshwar, Namdev, Eknath, Tukaram, as well as a woman was there, Sakubai, and the family of Chokha Mela. What was Chokha Mela? They belonged to an untouchable Mahar caste. Fine. This regional tradition of bhakti, it focused on the Vitthal. Now what is Vitthal? It is a form of Vishnu, and the temple is at Pandharpur, as well as on the notion of personal God residing in the hearts of all people. So they said that God is in every heart. Fine. Thus these saint poets, they rejected all the forms of ritualism, outward display of pity and social differences based on birth. So they strongly opposed these. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation. They rejected this and preferred to live with their families. They used to say that you should not leave your families, you should live with your families, earn your livelihood like any other person, while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. We should help out the others needy people. Now a new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. So bhakti means when you are sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta, what did Narsi Mehta say? There were Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. Fine. So children, end of today's topic. Thank you and have a nice day.